Please welcome to the stage Rachana Shanbhogue from The Economist.
Hi, I'm Rachana Shanbhogue, Business Affairs Editor at The Economist in London. And it's my pleasure to introduce Lars Klingbeil, Finance Minister and Vice Chancellor of Germany. The role of Finance Minister is always important, especially in Germany, and even more so when there's a special infrastructure fund to be spent, defense expenditure on the way, the world is on the brink of trade war, and the rules-based order looks in peril. So given this in tray, it's a marvel that Lars Klingbeil is here to speak to us, but he's here nonetheless. He will deliver his keynote for the first 15 minutes, and then he and I will have a conversation. So, Vice Chancellor, over to you.
So, Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and pleasure for me to be here today. When Minister Reem Alabali Radovan invited me to open the second day of the Hamburg Sustainability Conference, I said yes right away, because I want to promote policies that build bridges to a better future, a fairer future with closer international cooperations, more sustainability and more equality. Even well-established rules and institutions were unable to prevent a war in Europe. Germany has had to learn some drastic lessons in the recent years. For the first time since the end of the Second World War, we need to take care of our own security in a much greater extent. And our export-based economic model has to cope with long-term partners suddenly calling into question the trade relations that have strongly benefited both sides. These developments are important reasons why we need to swiftly strengthen our economy. The new German government has and will continue to take strong action. We will take strong action now because every euro and every bit of political capital we invest today will pay off as many times over in the future. To put it in another way around, inaction today will come at a great cost in the long run. Ladies and gentlemen, in the last few years, I have made several political visits to countries in the global south. I've been to Namibia, South Africa, Ghana, Mongolia, Chile, and Brazil. I know how important it is for us to talk to each other, not about each other. That's the key in building strong and trusting relationships. Successful cooperation benefits everyone. One important aim of this conference is to promote such helpful personal encounters. The world is currently undergoing tremendous realignments. The balance of power in the global economy and in international policy cooperations has been slowly shifting for years. For the benefit of global citizenship, we must rebuild multilateral cooperations. Multilateralism is the answer to global challenges. After all, we have plenty of interests in common, such as fighting climate change, displacement and expulsion, inequality, hunger and poverty, among others. A rule-based international order has the best chances of success for the largest number of countries. The Agenda 2030 demonstrates the international community's joint commitment to achieving these goals. This is the spirit we have to revive. Most countries still think that stable, rule-bound relations, including fair trade, are important. Most countries value the rule of law, not the rule of might. They support a strong United Nations and joint responsibility for the future of the global community. That's why our priority must be to defend the rule-based international order and also to reform it. Many of our international organizations will need to better reflect the changing global balance of power. For this, we have to invest much more in new strategic partnerships. And we will also need to listen to what our partners expect from us. These new partnerships will probably be more issue-based than in the past. We don't need to agree on everything to become partners, but only by working together, we will find real solutions in these major challenges. We already have a lot of good initiatives we can build on. I would like to mention a few of them more in detail. One of Germany's priorities is to successfully implement the G20 Compact with Africa. Moving forward, the Compact can and needs to support progress within the African continental free trade area, thus making it possible to combine markets, creating economies of scale that generate decent jobs. This will boost economic development and strengthen the fiscal capacities of African countries. We in Europe have an interest in an integrated African market. We need to ensure that our trade policies support integration, not make it more difficult as it perhaps sometimes has been the case in the past. Second, underscoring our dedication to global partnerships as well as our proactive approach to addressing global challenges, Germany is a leading player in development financing. In absolute terms and given current developments, we are on course to be the world's biggest contributor of official development assistance. Germany will stand by its international responsibilities, especially now when other major donor countries are reducing their support. Germany will remain a reliable partner. What we cannot do is to compensate bilaterally for the global shortfall in development financing. We call on old and new donor nations to increase their official development assistance to a similar level than ours. We also call on all donors to work better in coordinating this aid. Still, non-financial cooperation will be more important than ever in the future, like free and fair trade agreements. In this context, Germany supports the EU Global Gateway initiatives that fosters the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Third, as a finance minister, I need to talk briefly about taxation. Germany has a long been standing advocate of international tax corporations, promoting fair and transparent tax policies that benefit economies worldwide. For example, we are firmly committed to a global minimum tax. It will help developing countries because they can generate material tax revenues of their own, which they will then be able to invest back in their economies. We also want developing and emergency countries to be actively involved in international tax policy discussions. Thus, we ensure that international tax standards have broad-based support. These are all important initiatives, but we want to do even better. We want to take our cooperation to the next level. In 1977, the Independent Commission on International Developmental Issues, also known as the North-South Commission, was founded. It was chaired by the former Chancellor Willy Brandt, the former German Chancellor Willy Brandt. In the introduction of the North-South Commission's final report, which was published in 1980, Brandt wrote, "The challenge for the next decades will not be met by an adversary system of winners and losers, North versus South or East versus West, but only by one founded on human solidarity and international cooperation amongst all." With his call on a different, more respectful way of working with the Global South, Willy Brandt was far ahead of his time. Almost half a century later, we can still benefit from this inspiration to address global challenges. I'm therefore delighted and proud that within the new German government, we have agreed to establish a new North-South Commission. We now need to work on the specific details on how the Commission will be set up so that addresses that it addresses expectations from both the North and the South. I envision independent experts from the areas of politics, civil society, business and research from all parts of the world coming together on a regular basis to search for new answers. I am convinced that we also need to have some younger participants and more women than in the previous North-South Commission. The overall goal is to jointly suggest new North-South politics for a multipolar world. In these times, I believe that no crisis can be solved without cooperation of the countries of the Global South and the Global North. Therefore, we want to establish a new dialogue based on partnership. By founding a new North-South Commission, we can create a global network that I hope will make a decisive contribution to such a new North-South policy without doubling or disrupting the good day-to-day work that current institutions and processes are doing. Ladies and gentlemen, the American author Zora Neale Hurston once made the following insightful observations. There are years that ask questions and years that answer. After many years that raised more and more questions, 2025 can be the year of answers. We all share a common goal. We want to work together to solve the challenges of our time so we can create a better future that leaves no one behind. That's why we are here today. Let's all put our heads together and find answers to the big questions that affect us all. Thank you for listening and thank you for being on this conference.
So, Vice Chancellor, as you rightly say, there's a lot on the plate of Germany, there's a lot on your plate to take care of your security, as you put it, but also to defend and reform the rules-based system. And let's just stick with the domestic priorities for a moment. Maybe the easy part was changing the constitution and agreeing on the fund. The hard part now is to spend it. And you've said that as part of your goals in your first 100 days, you want the finance ministry to become like an investment ministry. So tell us, what are your priorities for this year? What are the bottlenecks in getting the spending out of the door?
I do know what everyone knows that we have this changes in constitutional law in Germany now, so we will spend 500 billion in a special fund for investment in school, in kindergarten, in streets and bridges, and so in the infrastructure of the country. And I think this is very important also in the fight against right-wing populism to show to the people that there's a modernization of the country, that something is happening in the country, that something is going on, and that life is going to be easier by investment in infrastructure. And so my aim now as a Minister of Finance is that people see that something is happening very fast. So in Germany, sometimes it needs 20 years that the first euro is invested. So my aim is that in this year, people see that something is happening. And for that, we have to change a lot of laws, fight a lot of bureaucracy, make the state a lot faster, and work together with the 16 countries. Peter Chancellor, Mayor of Hamburg, is here, so we will give them also a lot of money, and so I'm very sure that the 16 states will also invest a lot. And this is my aim, that people in Germany see something is changing and something is happening, and I'm very grateful that we now have the decision together with the CDU, CSU to spend so much money in the modernization of the country. And I think, last sentence from me, I think it's better to invest in future than not to invest in the future of a country.
Oh, this is all the more important because the economy has been weak for the past 2 years. It's been contracting. So what is the answer to the problem of economic growth? In addition to thinking about the global economic order, there's sort of a problem at home as well. And so will you be able to marshal enough stimulus to keep the economy strong?
This is what I hope. I mean, this is also a clear message to German economy. Now it's time to invest. And I mean, to be honest, we're in a geopolitical situation where I think it's not clear where all the investments will go. So we have 3 or 4 years in Germany now behind us, where a lot of industry, for example, did not do investments in Germany because of there are too high energy prices, there's too much bureaucracy, there's no investment, there was this fight in the old government, and so it was a political uncertainty. But on the other hand, I think Germany is a good place for investments, Europe is a good place for investments, and then we have, on the other side, we have Trump in the United States, and I know that a lot of businessmen and women thinking about, is United States the safe harbor for investments? And so my aim is to show that Germany is a good alternative for investments. Second point to this question is, I was reading a very good interview with Ursula von der Leyen in the last weeks in the German newspaper Die Zeit. And she was talking about there were so many governments from Latin America, Africa, Asia, give a clear signal towards the European Commission that we want to build new strategic partnerships, like I was talking my speech. And so I think this is really a good possibility for Europe to be a strong economic and political actor. And I think Germany would give an impulse with these investments we are now doing, public and private investments. So it's about being strong in Europe.
And moving abroad, as you say, there's threats to the global trading system. And America is your biggest export market. It's a hugely important export market for many countries in the world. You were in Canada at the G7 meeting. Did you come away reassured about the trading system at all? Were there elements where you thought there are common grounds for global multilateral action, or did you come away very worried?
No, I was not worried. I mean, I'm in office now since 3.5 weeks, and it was the first meeting, for example, with Scott Bessent, the colleague from United States, was the first meeting with the colleague from Canada. But in the debates, it was very clear that there's a lot of common interests, and I was thankful for that. I mean, when I was back in Germany, Trump was giving a speech on 50% in tariffs, so it did not match with the talk I had with the US colleague. But I think at the end we will find solutions, and this is the clear message from Germany and Europe towards the United States, that we want a common way, and we look for a common solution on the question of tariffs. But there was no instability on the multilateral system in the dialogue we had. But to be honest, nobody knows what will happen tomorrow in the United States. And so for me, as a German Vice Chancellor and Finance Minister, for me, the most important thing is that we do our homework in Germany and we do our homework in Europe. And if Europe is a strong actor on the international level, if Europe is a strong actor putting forward the multilateral system, if Europe is a strong actor asking also for strong international institutions, I think this will help. Not to sit here and wait for the next press conference in the White House, but do our homework. This is what we have to do.
So Europe has the advantage of having a big economy, nearly $20 trillion. It's a huge consumer market. Do you see the EU now as being the standard bearer for free trade around the world? Would that be your vision for now, what Germany and more broadly the EU must do?
If we are a good actor or not, want to be. Yeah, we have to. It's what I said before. We have, and to be honest, I had now my first meetings with the Eurogroup and the ECOFIN, and I think Europe is too slow. And so even when I'm talking to people, in the German government, then capital market union, yes, we need it, but we have to think about this detail and this detail. Strengthening the common European market, yeah, we have to do it, but we have to talk about this detail. So it's too much bureaucracy and not enough politics. And I'm now 47 years old, and I'm very sure that for my political generation, this is maybe the most important topic to go forward the next steps with the European Union. I mean, if you look to the history of Europe, there have always been political decisions that at the end made Europe stronger. And I think in these days, Europe is too much bureaucracy and not enough political decisions. And this is what I want. I want political decisions, because maybe these are 2 years and then we will have elections in France. Nobody knows what will happen then. So we had the presidential elections in Poland. Was a really terrible result. I think it's bad for Europe, and so it's now time to act, but we are not as strong as we need to be. So
how could you speed Europe up?
Political decisions. I mean, this is, and I think Germany, Olaf Scholz made a very good job as a Chancellor, and everyone knows that I really worked together with him, and I really liked what he was doing on the European level, but there was one coalition partner, was not the Green Party, that always blockades European decisions. And so we now need a government that really puts forward European decisions, together with France, together with Poland. So we need to go on. And I mean, this is also necessary if we look to the situation in Ukraine. We need a strong Europe. If we look to the markets, we need a strong Europe. If we see the political debates about multilateralism, we need a strong Europe. And this is what I said. So we can solve it if we go forward. Means not. This means not leadership by being arrogant, but it means leadership by convincing the other countries that we have to take action. That's important for me. We have to go forward, and we have to convince the others that it's good to have a capital market union, that we have to have a common foreign and security policy, a common development policy. So in all this question, I think Germany has good arguments, and we should really go on.
And what about the conversation, not just in Brussels with your peers within the Commission or the EU, but voters at home? The fact that there's an increased sort of interest in populist parties makes it harder to make the case for multilateralism, or it suggests that the support for free trade, for example, is falling, not rising. So what are the conversations that you need to have at home, that politicians need to have at home with voters to say there are benefits to trade?
Yeah, but this is the political debate we have to have. And I think it's if progressive parties are arguing against international cooperation or multilateralism, we will always lose. So we have to argue why it's important, even for the steel worker in Duisburg or for the automotive company in Lower Saxony, in my home state. We have to argue why it's important to have a global market, to have trade relationships, to have multilateralism, to have international institutions, and I think there are good arguments on our side. I think the problem for the progressive parties in the last years was that we didn't really argue for Europe or for the United Nations, because we were convinced that it's good to have them, and then we were silent, and so we left enough space for the right-wing populists. But we should never take their arguments. And to be honest, if I see what debates are happening in the Labour government in UK with the financing of development aid, or if we see what happens in the United States, I think it needs a clear signal from other countries that this is not the right way.
That's easier said than done. I mean, ultimately, to put it in really blunt terms, I mean, I don't envy your position. I would not want to be in your shoes. There's a choice here now between spending on defense because there's a war on the borders of the EU versus spending on aid, and this is a really difficult question. So, how should countries that have less means than Germany, that have higher debt problems of aging populations, think about this? It's a tricky dilemma, and it's a kind of a choice between your voters at home and people abroad.
Yeah, this is a total dilemma, and I will also have this dilemma in the next weeks as the Minister of Finance if I talk to my colleagues in the government, because I have to find some money for the budget. I mean, we're giving a lot of money for investments in infrastructure, and we will spend a lot of money in the military, but we have to reform the core budget. And we have to find money there. And there will also be a debate about how much money do we give for other countries. But I am convinced that every euro that is invested in cooperation with other countries is a euro that strengthens ourselves. And I said in my speech, it's not just money. I mean, it's also the question of how we build strategic partnerships. And I remember when I was traveling to Chile and Brazil, I was talking to President Lula. He was the candidate, not the president in these times, but he was talking about energy cooperation. And I think this is a total win-win situation. I remember when I visited Ghana and South Africa and Namibia, and especially in Ghana, I was really impressed how there's innovation, how there's also economic innovation, and I think we also can build a win-win situation. So that's, yes, we will talk about money, but we also have to talk about how we can build the strategic partnerships. And again, in the moment, this is a very good situation for Germany and Europe because all these countries are looking for other partners. And to also say that, there's also a security impact, because when I went to these countries, there was always a clear message towards Germany and Europe that China and Russia are still there and looking for cooperations. And I think if we want to have strong relationships also in security issues, we have to find the cooperations on energy markets, on economic questions, on political questions, and I think it's not a good idea if we have this space, we leave this space for China and Russia. So this is also a question of security if we have the cooperation with countries in Africa, in Asia, and in Latin America.
And that brings me to my last topic for you, which is China. As you say, America stepping away from the rules-based system and the global trading order, presents some opportunities for Europe. It also presents some opportunities for China, and China has a different vision for how it would like the multilateral system and the trading system to work. So where do you see areas for cooperation with China when it comes to thinking about global public goods and the global infrastructure, and where do you see elements of competition?
I mean, economy is always a competition, and but I remember my last visit in China, and I had a meeting with the Prime Minister. We were talking about climate questions. We were talking also about welfare state and how it's working in Germany. So I think this is maybe not an area of cooperation, but I think there are a lot of common interests. And so I'm very clear that we should cooperate with China, but we should always give the clear message, if you're attacking Taiwan, then everything will change. But before that, we should use every possibility to find common ways with China. And just want to mention when Olaf Scholz went to China as a chancellor, everyone was attacking him from the opposition, but it was a very good visit when he gave, together with President Xi, the signal towards Russia not to use nuclear power in the war in Ukraine. And yes, we know that China is standing close to Ukraine, to Russia, sorry, but we also need this diplomatic channels to talk to China. And so I think there are a lot of areas where we have competition, but I think there are also a lot of areas where we have common interests with China, and we should look for them, and we should cooperate with them, but always with a clear standpoint on questions like Taiwan, on human rights and all of this. We should never sell our principles and our values.
So, Vice Chancellor, the future looks like one where it's multilateral, but maybe there's smaller groups with common interests talking to each other. And at the same time, there's a conversation with Europe, speeding it up. There's a conversation with voters at home to make the case for cooperating and investing abroad and with the Global South. So your to-do list is getting longer and longer and longer.
No boring times, yeah.
Not boring times at all. Thank you very much for making
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.